I love all the pink. Welcome, Bobby, to The Bloody Truth.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here.
So I always hand over to my lovely guests to explain what they do, because I know there's always something that, it's nice to have like a way to describe exactly what you do in your own words. So for anyone that doesn't know, and I assume many people do, but for anyone that doesn't know, tell us what do you do and where do you come from?
What do I do? Where do I come from? Oh my God, how long have we got? So if you look at the screen, I am Bobby Davis, and I now go by the title of Mischief Ripple Maker, because having left the corporate world, I can call myself what the hell I like, which is really rather marvellous. So where am I from? I live in Camberley now. I have had quite an interesting career. I think it's interesting anyway, in terms of landing as a very young lass into the military for a number of years, and then joining corporates. I have worked in HR, predominantly organisational development rather than just HR pure, with a learning and development background. And now I am a coach, both from an integral perspective for people working in organisations or for their own lives, around leadership, and the key element, which I think that we may well be touching on today without any spoilers, is my somatic coaching, where I don't tend to lead with it, but it's part and parcel of everything else I do, which is trying to support people in learning a little bit more about body wisdom, rather than thinking that everything happens here with the constant natter that we have going on, and trying to check in elsewhere to see how they are.
Yeah, and I love that. I think we have like such a crossover in what we do because of that. I talk a lot of the time about body literacy, understanding the love language of our body and the symptoms and signals it gives us. And I think that is just such an amazing, well, that's a brilliant crossover between what we do, but it's also so very important to learn that, how our bodies speak to us. But I also know we've both, in a similar way, had very a different introduction into sort of working life. I was for anyone that doesn't know this, and I don't mention it a lot of the time, but I was a chef for a long time. So I worked in hospitality. If anyone's worked in kitchens in hospitality, they will tell you it's very well, it's not bringing the cyclical energy vibe that I really love.
Absolutely not.
No, there's a lot of shouting, and it's the patriarchy is strong within the professional kitchens. But I also know that you have a background coming from the army. I mean, slightly different, but it's that very like rigid. There's no room for softness there. That teamed with sort of executive roles and leadership spaces. So I'd be just curious to know, like, what your relationship was with your body then, and even if you had a relationship with your menstrual cycle in any capacity, or was it something like I did and just to be like, oh, I'll ignore that until it's a problem?
Well, I guess even before I joined the military, even as a teenager, when I first started my periods, not that you could tell it to look at me now, but I used to be quite a good athlete, and was sort of like was on the verge of junior international heptathlon at one point when I was in my much younger years. And so my dad, who wasn't military, he'd done national service, but he hadn't been military. He might as well have been, though, because of my upbringing. But he literally marched me off to the doctors to get me put on the pill at 14, 15, so that I could curb my periods, so that I didn't have to stop training, or it wouldn't mess up any of my competitions. So in terms of relationship with period or body, right from the start, it was mask it, stop it, so that you could get on with whatever. And so, of course, you then get into the military, and both from a period perspective, but a body perspective as well, was very much about stand to attention, have everything rigid, almost like lock everything down. So again, if we were going to be out on exercise, pop the pill so that you didn't have to have your period. So it was just a nose, basically. It's like I knew when it was coming, but I only needed to know when it was coming so I could stop it.
Right.
So and again, somebody was asking me the other day about where do I hold my stress? In my knees. The first thing that happens is that I lock my knees out when I can feel sort of like stress or anger or something coming. I stand to attention. I just get back into that locking knees out sort of element. And it was very much when I started doing the body work, I know what I feel like armor plated wise, and and just quite what I can lock off, and what I have to do to actually sort of like get myself away from that and to pull the armor away. But yes, I think my first relationship with periods was don't have them, because they're a damn nuisance to getting everything stopped. And I think I took that mentality very much into executive life as well when I joined corporates.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, and the sort of subtext of that is, anything that goes along with having a period, being softer, like more cyclical, more in tune with our bodies, is, unnecessary, impractical, inconvenient, or, I'm also curious, like what I often say, at the time before I sort of really understood my cycles, because I had a similar way for different reasons. I was on the pill from 14, and then sort of on and off different types of pills, and then from 24 I had like 3 rounds of the coil. So again, there was not space to have a period in a professional kitchen, but I think it, not just with my period, but with the rest of my body, I mean, I just carted it around like a meat suit along for the ride. I mean, it just really was, it, whatever my brain decided that was a good idea to do, or just drag my body through it, regardless of, anything that was trying to tell me. I'm imagining it was kind of a similar situation, like beyond periods, like how you treated your body as well.
For sure. So when I had, so I was quite lucky in certain respects, that from about 25, when I met my now husband of, well, we've been together over 30 years now, not married for quite that amount of time, but he'd had a vasectomy. So I was able to just stop taking any medication whatsoever. And then we had our daughter. But what I found then, and again, I sort of made the linkage, but was like, right, I now appear to have tonsillitis all of the time, because I kept catching, when she went off to nursery, I kept catching bugs and germs, and mine always became tonsillitis. But aligned with that, I was also getting tonsillitis every month, like a sore throat, and it would become something else. So instead, again, of slowing down and realizing that I needed to perhaps be looking at vitamins, or what I needed to be doing to look after myself, was like, right, let's get to the doctor and get the tonsils taken out. So I then had my tonsils taken out in my 30s, which was horrific. But again, get rid of the thing rather than take a look at the holistic. So I was very much about, is it the quick fix? It wasn't exactly a quick fix, but it was the rather than taking a look at the whole, it was like, let's just get to that point and do something about that, rather than that wholesome approach to what was really going on.
Yeah. And it's so true with the holistic approach. I mean, we talk about things a lot of the time in isolation. People talk about the nervous system, or your menstrual cycle, or something else. It was all, but I mean, it doesn't work separately like that. No, it is all intrinsically connected. Like how we experience stress will directly impact, how we regulate our hormones and our nervous system. Stress is a major factor in irregular cycles or delayed periods, or even early periods. Some people experience will have an early period if they're particularly stressed. And this is all to do with how we react to stress through our nervous system. It will fire up cortisol and adrenaline, the things that we need to escape from lion attack, but it will shut down unnecessary functions in our bodies, like the menstrual cycle, digestion, the gut where we keep most of our immune system, and our, and our nervous system. So it all has like a knock-on effect. And I think I was very guilty of like looking at these things in isolation, but never all together, which is, and I know that's kind of what somatic work is. It's looking at that whole holistic system. And rather than, I know you talk about this shifting from pushing through to like being in this more grounded space. So what does that look like in a more tangible way?
So my somatic work has taught me that there is a narrative around all of it, and it may well be that there's certain parts of the narration that are in isolation, and then you take a look at the whole. So let me see if I can explain that a bit better. So basically, what's the training that I've done and the somatic work that I've done talks about the fact that anything that has happened to you stays in your body. It's in your muscles, it's in your sinews, so that there will be people who have had significant trauma experience. It stays in the body. So anything that has happened to you is in your body. So when I was beginning to tap into what all of that energy looked like, that's how I realized what was happening with my knees, but equally what was happening with my throat. Because when that armor plating came off, one, I thought I was having a heart attack because I was stretching heart muscles, because I was letting emotion start telling a bit of a story of its own. And I had a lot of energy of things that I hadn't said out loud because of the very strict upbringing, the strict upbringing I'd had, and then being in the military, and then believing that I needed to be a particular way to work in corporates, which felt like I got a Dorito stuck in my throat. I think you've heard this story before, but I honestly thought there was something the matter with my throat. So I was still going back to the doctor going, oh God, can I have a endoscopy or whatever it might be? And then it went, because I went to see the somatic coaches and they said, right, you need to start using your voice. You need to start saying the things that you really want to be saying. I know my voice sounds a bit weird at the moment. Festival voice. I've had a lovely time for 4 days, but it doesn't hurt because I have been singing and doing all the things that want to come out of my body. But I can relate what was happening to my body to how I was living. And now I can see how my body reacts because of the way that I choose to live now. So the stories tie up, and the more that you can tune into, and not everything has to have a label or a reason or a name, but it's when you actually start to realize perhaps how some of the habits have continued in the same way. So that I know that if I am angry, the best thing I can do is smile and soften my knees. So it doesn't need to come from here. It can come from somewhere else. If I feel like I am swallowing back on something that I am saying, I might change my breathing. And it may well be that I have to appreciate that it's not the moment to blurt it out. So I write it down. Writing it down is a somatic practice. I say to people, God, I hope nobody ever sees my notebooks, because sometimes if I've been irate in a meeting, what was being written in the book was what the, just actually written down, but to get it out of the body. And then in a different way, I could check in with myself that it was fine, and I could now find a way of saying what needed to be said.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that I tend, my practice is to try to start with the body rather than necessarily the head or the mouth, which has got me into plenty of trouble with being outspoken in the past. And I'm still outspoken, but it comes in a different way. And the softening that you keep talking about, I am still assertive. I am still very supportive. I still say what needs to be said for people when I'm coaching them. Somebody said I should call my coaching punch in the face coaching. I never mean to punch anyone in the face, but I do say the things that need to be said. But it comes from a very different place, because it's not just here, it's taking into account. So I do it for others and I do it for myself.
That's so interesting. And I really like the idea of like starting with the body, because sometimes so trauma might not be identified, or in some cases it's not helpful to always sit in the trauma of things.
No.
It might be in a, you know, a supported guided space, but other times, you know, we just need, it might be more helpful in fact to look at what's that imprint left behind, and that is looking at like how we hold ourselves, like you were saying, when you notice your reactions from things, like what are the tools you actually need to take you out of that without always having to go back into the trauma and sit with that, because that's not always like really helpful. It's like you're having a trauma response, like how do you move forward out of that rather than always going back to like sit in it. You know, sometimes that's helpful, but other times we just need to move forward in life. You don't always have the time to sort of sit and, you know, marinate in it, and you need to like,
sorry, can I just say something about that? Because one of the things that when people have had some level of trauma, it hasn't necessarily happened across all levels of what I refer to as the arcs of shaping. So we start shaping ourselves as soon as we're born. So there is the bornness, that's not even a word, but you know what I mean, where we're actually born, the families we are born into, the institutions that we become part and parcel of. For some of us, that is just the school university element. For me, it was school, university, and then the military, you know, very institutionalized. For some people, it's the church, those sort of like things that we count as institutions. There's the societal norms that sort of like the communities that we've lived in. We were talking about what it was like to be in a Wiltshire village during COVID or whatever it might be, but there's shaping elements there. And then there's your landscape. So one of the things that you can do is to create yourself what I call an emotional autobiography. So what's the narrative around all of those elements? So your elements. So you're absolutely right. The trauma may well have happened in a particular place, but do you have a different emotional story around a landscape, around standing with your feet in the sea or looking at a landscape? You know, was your safe space at school, or was that the most dangerous place? That sort of like element. So people will have emotional stories around all of it. And so having them build all of that, you can then see, for me, when I'm coaching, where's the best place to help them with new body shapes or new things that will help them to work around it, rather than staying in the soup or whatever metaphor that you actually want to have, because you can work around that to not necessarily. Some people will need to go into it but other ways you can be working still as well without always like poking the bear, you know, prodding it too much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because sometimes you'll be in a scenario where you need to move through that quickly.
Sure. Yeah.
And you just need some like tools. It's like, you know, like you said, like, okay, there's a thing happening. I can spend some time looking at this later, but right now I just need to, like, whatever it is, soften my knees, change my breathing, because you need to just navigate a situation or navigate life. I think that's so helpful as well, and to know those things like about yourself. For me, it's always my chest tightens and my throat closes up. I was very you know, of the, I don't want to rock the boat, you know, and I just feel like myself like shrinking
in.
So I just know that I just need to take a breath and not and not shrink actually, but like hold my space and hold my ground. And it's been really interesting sort of looking at that, and I can feel myself doing like, oh
yes.
And I think it's also really people say, oh, you're looking for a full body, yes, but actually I think there can be like if you're trying to make a decision about something, or you know, what you're looking for in your body, and I tend to always look towards my body to help me with a decision. But I said, obviously you can have like a full body yes or no, actually, because sometimes no is just as liberating. But it's more like the body language. Whether it's a yes or a no, if I'm like no or yeah, all right, like that's the wrong decision. That's the
Absolutely.
wrong. That's probably armed with a whole, red flag of shoulds with it. But if I'm like no or yes, and I feel really open, that's just how I've learned to sort of make decisions that I know are going to be aligned with my highest joy, really.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, which is a great practice for people, is to be in that level of reflection, but do the thing with your body and go, if I'm saying yes, what's the possibility look like here? And then if I'm saying yes from here, what possibilities are now open to me? So there is that, so that you can, we use the thinking mind a lot, but what we do is we leave the rest of it out. Whereas the practice can be working in relation to the thinking mind, and it supports the thinking mind. But actually doing both bits and seeing what your world looks like from both vantage points is actually quite liberating too.
Yeah. Yes, I remember you did a workshop with us, and you got to sort of change our perspective as well, like to like help thinking, and that can be really helpful as well. Like just, or even if it's like going outside, or I don't know, standing at the top of the stairs or halfway up the stairs, like take yourself into a place where you're not normally making decisions.
Absolutely.
That can be interesting.
I mean, even for people who are online like this in meetings and then wanting to land something, I'm not suggesting they actually do this in the meeting, but take your feet off the floor and I'm doing it now, and I don't feel anywhere near as stable, having that conversation or trying to, say something to anybody, as to having your feet much more settled and feeling grounded. It's all about us being able to properly advocate for ourselves, and our body will help us do that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I have so many things. But I think it's also really important as well, like from a cyclical point of view, is, I mean, I talk a lot about periods, but I also talk about the fact that periods are just one phase of 4. And actually, we have these shifting energies throughout the month that shift and change. And so we're going to feel different about the types of decisions that we make at different times. And I think then it's even more important to lean into your body and what it's trying to tell you, because what felt good last week, saying yes to something that made you feel really empowered last week, when you had like peak estrogen energy, like when that sort of ebbs away, that might not have the same thing. It might feel like draining now or exhausting now. So it's like constantly referring back to your body, because it's always going to be shifting, throughout the course of the cycle, and even post cycle. I talk about this a lot as well, that like, lunar tracking, and we've had this conversation, is just as important, because I think it's still important to have a framework of energy to work in, to give yourself time to push and time to pause, because when we pause, we make time to integrate what we've learned. It's literally the purpose of Shavasana. It's a lovely rest at the end of your yoga practice. Actually, when you're doing a yoga practice and a movement practice and creating new neurological pathways in the brain, because neuroplasty, the brain's like, plastic, and it can shape and mold, we can learn new habits. It's when you're at rest, in that Shavasana state, where you're kind of like not quite awake, not quite asleep, that you start integrating that. There's like science behind it. And so that makes sense in our life, right? That we have these times to push, times to pause. And what helps us get there is by listening to like our bodies and what they're trying to tell us. I feel like I go on a much bigger side quest.
No, I agree. And it's just why I was so pleased to have met you, because of course, here I am on the bloody truth, and I haven't had a period now for probably 2-3 years. But then I've been having to deal with just my whole frigging body aching the whole time and sweating like I'd been thrown into a swimming pool, and everything else besides, with the perimenopause. And again, I went into this, but I got so used to not taking any medication. I didn't want to look at HRT. I didn't want to look at anything else. And it's only been since I've stopped working in the corporates that whilst I was doing my somatic practice, I didn't align myself to cycles, because I thought, well, I have no idea what this is now. But having talked to you over a year ago, that first time, we're coming up to a year now, I have been doing that, but utilizing what I know somatically, but aligning it to vitamins, aligning it to nutrition, aligning it to exercise. And yeah, I have taken some level of HRT. I'm not gonna lie about it. But again, I guess I've been questioning, have I done what I did before in terms of masking what's going on? Possibly, but trying to do it without having done all of the others. I think I'm at a point where I might be able to come off it because I've done all of these other things. But knowing that, checking in with my body, especially since I've been doing a lot more exercise and nutrition, or am I thirsty? Just actually stopping ourselves with all of that. But my level of self-care has always been a bit of a challenge to me. I'm good at looking after everybody else's, but my self-care is now uppermost. And the things that you have taught me in the conversations that we've had, and when I've heard you speak about just taking a look at that lunar cycle, or knowing that I'm still in a cycle, even if I'm not doing all the things that the body has done when I was younger, is the right thing to do about making decisions about how much I can be in work, charging around, or just chilling a little bit. That I've integrated what I've learned from you with what I knew already from my somatic stuff. But it's still about body knowledge.
Yeah, it really is. I think even if a person, people with periods who don't track or chart or have there still is that inner rhythm that you have a period every now and then, or depending on what the scenario is, contraceptives, etc. There will still be, even if you try and push through that, there's still like a little bit of your body that's like very loudly saying, oh, stop. I think without periods, that is much harder to kind of navigate, and it's almost, you could almost go on as a robot with endless energy, like in an endless state of doing. But actually in perimenopause, it is so very important to take time to pause, because we're much more susceptible to stress. We've got hormones that are changing. We haven't got as much progesterone to I would say progesterone is like the yin to estrogen's yang. It helps support the rest and digest. It is more important, I think, to take the time to pause and to establish some sort of framework. But even post menopause, then it doesn't just all go back up. We still need to take time, and that's what I think like the lunar cycle does. And then wrapping that in like somatic practices and understanding your body, and then doing it's about, I wouldn't say doing the right things at the right time, the things that are needed or that feel nourishing at the time when you need them most. That's it.
And I think that with any of these things, however old somebody is or whatever part of life that they're in, the moon keeps going. It's that level of cycle. There is always a cycle to come back to. But I also think that there is that element. I was thinking about this the other day because I had the opportunity to do a breathing practice. And I'd done it before, and it hadn't gone very, very well. And yet this time I seem to be totally in it. But I think I have to be really careful with myself to not expect the next time I try to do it, because there will be a next time, that it is going to be as superb and euphoric as it was the time that I've just done. Because even with all the practices that we actually have, some of them will work really well because we've actually managed to hit right on it at the part of the cycle that we're actually in. But it's not, there's no permanence to the same experience over and over again. And I think that that's probably the key thing for me in my messaging and this learning of kindness to the self is, oh, well, that was crap. It was really good last time, and now it's been really rubbish. I've probably done something wrong. It just is what it is. It's like whether it's yoga, whether it's breathing, whether it's any form of somatic practice, mindful practice, whatever it is, just take it as it is, because it's better to be having that moment to rest and the pause and anything else, whatever shows up and however it comes about or however it ends up, than not doing it.
Yeah. That's so, yeah. And, in that way of thinking, it is cyclical. We don't live in a linear world. We're wrapped in cycles, and that will be our internal cycle, which will impact like how we experience the world and, our practices and the things that we do. Then we're wrapped in the cycles of the seasons of the year, our life cycles. Like our internal rhythms mirror the blueprint of the great nature that surrounds us. Which sounds very woo, but I'm here for it.
It's true. I think, and I think that, I really want for my daughters and my nieces and who haven't started their periods yet, my granddaughter who's just been born, you don't want it to be the same as it felt like it was for me, with that whole masking element going on. But I also I hear my daughter doing it, and I've heard other people doing it as well, that they're in their cycle and they are always thinking ahead to the next one.
Yeah.
In certain respects. And because so you hear the narrative. I mean, I think this is where the thinking mind takes in, because you hear the narrative of my periods are always awful. They're always really heavy. Now, that I'm not suggesting that that's not true. But I wonder I wonder these days what we are doing before the period arrives by creating the narrative before it actually arrives.
Yeah.
Whereas if we can be in a mode of, that was the one in the past, we are here right now. What can we be doing for our bodies in preparation right here in this present moment? I'm no wizard or witch to be able to say I can stop the next period being as heavy or as painful. But I do wonder what happens when we are in that narration of, because the last one was like that, that's what the next one will be like as well. Now, that might be too woo, that we think that we can talk ourselves out of it. But I just wonder when we let that narrative inhabit our body, what it does before it actually starts.
And also I think when we let a narrative lead, an existing narrative lead, we often make the same actions and habits that got us there to the last one. And if we're talking in terms of like having a cycle and times to push and times to pause, there will be a time where we have a peak energy, which is sometimes, there's many caveats with this, around ovulation or a full moon. But there will also be a slowing down. And that's the bit that sometimes gets skipped. It's not that it's not productive or we're not doing, it's just slowing down in preparation for a time of very low energy. And I think if we could just observe that just even a little bit more.
And that requires the narrative to have the volume turned down on it, so that you can spot when that is happening. And that's where the body has to be the place that it leads first. But if you've got the whole narrative going on about, oh, here it comes, a bit like if I think about myself in those days of tonsillitis of, oh, well, it'll be here next week, I was almost saying, and then, oh, holy shit, there it is again, and I'm not suggesting I bought it on, but I'm just wondering what was like, oh God, that whole element, because there was probably a moment before that where I'd missed that pause. I'd missed that pause to up my vitamin C. I'd missed that pause to sleep longer. I'd missed that pause to rest, because I was busy driving on, just going, here I am driving on, and tonsillitis will arrive next week. It's nuts.
there's so much there. I could talk forever, but I'm also mindful of our time, because I'm gonna keep these short, and I say this every week.
Then you get me on.
Yeah. We could just go on forever. So we kind of touched on already at the beginning what my last question normally is, which is, what your relationship was with your body and how it's changed. So maybe actually it'd be more interesting now, if you could go back, what would you tell yourself, but what would you wish your inner narrative was at the time, probably at peak meat suit, carrying your body around for a meat suit? What would you wish your narrative was? Or
there's something I can't really, I'm just trying to work out how to articulate it as well, but something around don't leave yourself out.
Okay.
I was so there was so much of we're back to the shaping element that my dad dictated first what my body would sort of like be used like, and I allowed that to happen, and then I was so busy striving in the military that there was like masking. It was like internal masking. Yeah. I did less masking from the outside a lot of the time, because I think I was masking inside. So I think that, if there would have even been a little moment every now and again for that internal voice to be about I mattered and what I wanted mattered, I probably wouldn't have had the Dorito stuck in my throat, and I probably would have spoke up for myself more. And my life experience may well have been very different, because who'd have said where I would have ended up then, if I'd have advocated. I think I could have. I would love to have had the same life. I don't regret anything that I have done or have achieved. I think I could have done it feeling a lot better.
Yeah. It's interesting looking back. Amazing. I just love everything that you do. It is just so full and rich of like in wisdom and like body knowledge. Thank you so much for coming on to talk to everyone today. Where's the best place for everyone to reach you, or is there anything you're doing at the moment that you want everyone to know?
Well, if you haven't got your Geek Together ticket yet, I suggest you get that. We ought to say that, because that's the next time that you're going to see me up on stage doing my stuff. So that's in September.
Yeah,
September
I'll be
12th, isn't it? Marvellous. Just finished season 6 of More Than a Lumpy Jumper, the podcast. And whilst Bridget and I and our nuttiness and amazing guests like the amazing Samantha Garstin, we're talking about leadership, we're talking about life, and often my somatic bodywork comes into every conversation that we're having somewhere along the lines to show that it is totally aligned. Whatever leadership live conversation you're having, the body is part and parcel of that. So you can get hold of me there. And then there is my website and LinkedIn.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. And and come see us, everybody, at the Geek Together. Yay. All right. See everyone next week, or a couple of weeks. I think it will be week after next. Bye.
Take care, everyone.